Thank you for joining me on the Fire Rescue Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, AZ. I find the research and resources and then provide the fire service with the so what, now what, to ensure the health and well-being of every member of our profession. Together, let's thrive. Hey everybody, it's AZ. I think, use your finger quotes, I think this is going to be a short episode today. I am recording the Sunday before Memorial Day. I need to get this episode out to my manager, Jeremiah, so he doesn't have to work on Memorial Day. So I want to talk a little bit about hiring a health and wellness professional at your fire agency. And this could be for a police agency as well. But I am right in the midst of teaching my class, Building a Career in Fire, a Health and Wellness Professionals Roadmap. And the reason I designed that class is that there are so many really, really good professionals out there, whether they're strength coaches, dietitians, mental health professionals, chiropractors, ATs, PTs, you name it, massage therapists. There's so many great professionals out there, and they all tell me the same thing. When they try to begin working with fire agency, they just run into roadblocks. They don't know who to talk to. They don't know what to say. And it's very rare that they're ever successful on their own getting either a contract or employment with a fire agency. So I designed this course. But within teaching the course, a couple themes just keep coming up over and over and over again. One of the themes is we are not creepy used car salesmen. We are not in the business of trying to sell something to fire departments. We are in the business of trying to provide solutions. And yes, those solutions cost something. You have to pay for professional services. But when we look at it through the lens of we are trying to provide solutions, it makes it a lot easier to have the conversations with the agencies. So that's the first theme. And then the second theme that just seems to keep like over and over and over and over again fitting are dating analogies. And so the one I use is you're in the produce section, you're trying to pick out an avocado or a pineapple. Lord, I think for pineapple, you're supposed to be able to pluck out one of the leaves. I don't know. Who knows? You're trying to pick out a piece of produce. And someone you don't even know, you've never seen this person before in your life, comes swooping in and starts hitting on you and asks you for your phone number, or even worse, asks you right then and there on a date. And it's just really, really weird because they didn't take any time to build any sort of rapport with you or any sort of relationship with you. And now you're kind of left in this awkward limbo state. And it's the exact same thing when a health and wellness professional just cold calls a fire agency, like, I'm here now and this is what I want to do. It just doesn't work very well. I always tell my students, this is not a microwave, this is a crock pot. And so we have to lovingly and carefully place the ingredients into the crock pot, set it for the appropriate amount of time, and then something beautiful, well, more than likely something beautiful is going to happen. But if we take those same ingredients, Lord have mercy, I was born in the 70s. Okay, microwaves were new when I was born, and my family ate so much gray roast from my mom trying to cook roast in the microwave with that weird probe. Like, roast is not meant to be cooked in the microwave. And so these relationships, both dating and with a fire agency, are also not meant to be cooked in the microwave. So these dating analogies are just sprinkled throughout the whole course, but it's really interesting because my students totally get it. When I try to explain something through a dating analogy, they're like, oh my gosh, I understand now. And so I had a very excited student reach out to me a couple days ago. He's in the current course and he said, AZ, I'm so excited. I made contact with a fire agency and they said, yeah, send us a contract. And I said, a contract for what? And he's like, I don't know, but they want a contract. And I'm like, honey, I didn't say honey, but in my head, I'm like, honey, you did not listen. to what we were saying the last couple weeks, because we can't provide a contract for something when we don't know the services that need to be provided. And the only way we know the services that need to be provided is to get to know the agency and to do a needs analysis. And so, what I use another dating analogy with my student, and I'm like, listen, you're about to get in a relationship with a department and they are not acting right. They're already not acting right. They are asking you to provide a contract for random services and they're setting you up to fail. And so once I explained it that way, we kind of worked out his excitement and I gave him the language to reach back out to the agency. I gave him the language. Everybody is cool. But as an agency, I think that we can also learn from this lesson, because I receive a lot of text messages and messages within the course of a week. And a friend from Illinois reached out and he's like, AZ, do you know of any platforms that will track multiple brands of sleep trackers? So, well, my first thought was like, I need a better question, my dude. But what he meant was, will Bridge or Team Builder or Train Heroic or any of those types of programming platforms interface with multiple brands of sleep trackers? So Whoop and Oura Ring, and I don't know, mine's Polar, and I'm sure there's a ton of other sleep trackers. And I said, I don't know, and I can put you in contact with RK at Bridge and you can ask, but also why? And he said, well, the chief wants to do some research on sleep. And so then I said, okay, but research involves like a research design. It involves a scientist. It involves an institutional review board who looks at the study design to make sure you're not hurting your participants. It doesn't sound like you're doing research. It sounds like you're just, what are you doing? Actually, that was just my answer. Like, what is the chief trying to do? And he said, well, we just can't get in front of all these damn injuries. And so that the chief thinks like if we can track people's sleep. And I'm thinking, and if you can track people's sleep and what though? Because it's not a research study unless it's blind. So the chief isn't going to see the people and their sleep. It's not a research study. And if it's not a research study, who's going to consent to that? Like, I'm not going to consent to have my sleep records turned over to an agency. And so once we talked through it a little bit more, I was just like, friend, it sounds like there's desperation here. And the chief is throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. Another analogy some people use is throwing shit at the wall, but I like spaghetti, throwing spaghetti at the wall, although I don't throw spaghetti at my own wall. I digress. And my friend admitted, yeah, that's totally it. He's grasping at straws. And I said, I can put you in contact with people that have already done this research. You probably don't need to duplicate it in your own department. And what they're going to tell you is, yeah, when people don't sleep as well, they get injured more. But what I grasped onto with that conversation is this: departments are desperate. The department that asked my student, just write up a contract, and the department that asked their employee, let's do a study, they're desperate. And much like in dating, desperation doesn't work very well. We have to get strategic and we have to get tactical and we have to ask the right questions so that we get the right answers or the right solutions to the problems. Because otherwise, we're just throwing good money after bad money. We want to make sure that if we are spending our dollars on solutions, not things, solutions, we want to make sure that those solutions have a fighting ass chance to work. And so this needs analysis is something that I teach within my class. And a needs analysis is a very honest conversation between the health and wellness professional and the various stakeholders of the agency. And when we're looking at stakeholders, we have to keep a lot of different people in mind. We have to think about the run-of-the-mill line personnel. We have to think about the officers that manage those personnel on a day-to-day basis. We have to think about administrative level officers, chief level officers. We have to think about the union, if applicable. We need to think about if there's a health and safety committee at play. We need to think about representation from the city, village, municipality, whatever it is. Unless you're a fire protection district, we need to think about representation from the people that have the purse strings. We may want to consider representation from the workers' comp company that represents the agency. That can be a dual-edged sword. I mean, I've worked with workers' comp companies that have actually covered my fees. And I've worked with workers' comp companies that have said, we need to remove dumbbells that weigh more than 35 pounds because they're too dangerous. And so the workers' comp can be a double-edged sword. But we need representation from all levels of the agency and all of the stakeholders, because every single person, not necessarily every single person individually, but every single person needs to be represented. And we want to make sure if we're not getting every single demographic represented, we're going to get a very lopsided view of the challenge. And so within these meetings, what usually happens is the personnel, so the rank and file, regular line personnel and their officers are usually about stuff. They want things. They want equipment. They want watches, gadgets, programs, prizes, apps. They want things. They say things like, I just need to get motivated and I just need someone to hold me accountable. And there's nothing wrong with any of those opinions, but if that's the only opinion that's brought to the table, then we have a severely incomplete solution. So we also need to hear from the admin. And what we're going to hear from the admin is we need to decrease our injuries. We need to decrease our use of workers' comp. We need to decrease our sick time usage. We need to decrease overweight and obesity. We need to increase compliance with physical fitness training. Those are just a few things that you may hear from the admin. There may be other things, because here's the deal. Every agency is different. And yes, can I just about guess what they're going to say? I can. But also, if I don't listen to the agency that's in front of me, I'm creating a solution to a problem they might not even have. I don't think I mentioned these people before, but if there are peer fitness trainers, existing peer fitness trainers, they need to be brought to the table as well, because we can't just exclude them. We have to decide, are we going to utilize them? How are we going to utilize them? Do they even want to be peer fitness trainers anymore? What are we going to do? And the message that generally you're going to hear from the peer fitness trainers is kind of like, well, what about us? Like, we went to this school. We want to be involved. What about us? And here's the side note on peer trainers. They're generally just good people that enjoy working out. And so they are going to have their niche that they're very interested in, whether that's CrossFit, whether they were a collegiate athlete, whether they're like they do strongman or Highland Games. Maybe they're a firefighter combat challenge competitor. Maybe they're a marathoner. Maybe they're a bodybuilder. Maybe they do Zumba, whatever. But they're going to want to know what's in it for me. Like, this is what I like to do. And so how are we going to be able to do what I like to do? Of course, again, the accounting department or the people with the purse strings, they need to be involved. And their main question is, how in the hell are we going to pay for this? This is too expensive. It doesn't matter if it were $4.87. How in the hell are we going to pay for this? It's too expensive. The union is really, really important to get involved. And I tell my students this. The union is very important for keeping the workplace safe for the firefighters. And I give all kinds of examples of unsafe working conditions. in the past, and how having unions have made sure that not only firefighters, but other career people are paid fairly, they're compensated well, they have good working conditions, and so on and so forth. So I explain that, but I also explain it like this. If you can't interface with the union, you can't interface with the department. And so they need to be a part of this decision-making process. And their concerns are going to be safety and anonymity and making sure things are non-punitive. And so, what are you going to do to make sure that our members are doing things that are safe and that they are not going to be punished for not complying or not losing enough weight or not whatever? Those are the concerns that they will have. And one of my students brought up a question in a previous cohort. He's like, I really kind of don't get that. Like, why are they so paranoid? And I said, listen, this isn't even weird. Think about the nervous system. The nervous system seeks safety always. And anything that feels like a danger is an immediate no. So just like any type of movement, if it feels dangerous, the nervous system is going to shut you down. With the union, if it feels dangerous or unknown, they're going to shut you down. And guess what? Same thing in dating. If the nervous system doesn't feel safe, it's going to shut down. And so that's why it's really, really important to make sure that that stakeholder is at the table. And then I also remind my students that they are also a stakeholder. And so setting up expectations, managing expectations, making sure that, everyone is on the same page, that is part of this stakeholder meeting. The other thing that some other things that I tell my students is it's really important not to make any sort of guarantees, because they can guarantee you that they are going to provide good service, but they cannot guarantee you what's going to happen on the other end of that service. That's like, they just can't do that. It's like saying, if you eat in a calorie deficit of 3,500 calories every week, I guarantee you'll lose a pound a week. I can't make that guarantee, but I can guarantee if we consistently eat in a caloric deficit, we will more than likely lose weight steadily. That's the best guarantee I can make. And I might not even say steadily. I also let them know that they can't care more than the people or the agency. And so we have to match energy in terms of what we're doing, what we're providing, just the whole piece of it. We have to make sure that we're also observing our own boundaries and not just worrying about, I have this contract with an agency. So at this meeting, again, the different stakeholders will have different concerns, and we need to, just like when we're on a date, we need to ask good questions so that we get good answers. And typically, when we look at the physical profile of firefighters, when we look at their BMI, there's about 70% of firefighters that are classified overweight or obese. And people are like, well, BMI is bullshit, Annette. Okay, but when we look at their body fat percentage, an even higher proportion of firefighters are classified as overweight and obese. So you can think BMI is bullshit, all that you want, but firefighters, a very large percentage of them are overweight and obese. They generally suffer from potential type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetic situations. They might have elevated blood pressure. They generally can have low testosterone, even in young males. Hearing loss is a big thing. They also have really big problems with their vision and vestibular systems, more than likely due to at least one, if not multiple, minor traumatic brain injuries. They may have pelvic floor issues that they don't even know about, potentially due to being overweight and obese, poor breathing techniques, poor intake of fiber. Rescue RD preaches all the time. We need about 35 to 38 grams of fiber as a male, 25 as a female. The typical firefighter gets 5. And so they are creating their own pelvic floor problems by straining to go to the bathroom. They also have a habit of what's known, I call it the dreaded safety pee, meaning you aren't sure how long it's going to be until the next time is that you can go to the bathroom. And so you're going to go to the bathroom now just to be safe. Well, unfortunately, that serves to create issues in your pelvic floor, as does holding it, quote unquote, holding it too long. And so, in addition to all of those other things, we have movement deficiencies. Just because we're human and we're not really great at humaning anymore, we do an awful lot of sitting and an awful lot of slouching and an awful lot of playing video games and not being as active as we should. So humans in general aren't great movers, but then we take these typical movement patterns where we should have really great movement at our ankles and our hips and our thoracic spine, and we put gear on. So boots that lock down our ankles, pants and belts and air packs that lock down our hips, and those same air packs and the coats that lock down our T-spine. And now it's more or less a recipe for disaster because the joints that should move freely are no longer moving freely. And so if your ankle doesn't move and your hip doesn't move, your knee takes up the slack, and your knee really shouldn't be moving other than very small degrees of rotation and then flexion and extension. And so all of those things coupled together, like those are the things that a professional can help them work on. The other thing that we need to think about is that in addition to health and wellness, there are also performance needs for firefighting. And this is a really old article. It's 14 years old now, but Denise Smith in a volume of ACSM in 2011 said, firefighting is a dangerous occupation amongst the most arduous occupations that humans can undertake. True. And then she also said in a different, no, I'm sorry, it's the same article. Essentially, there is a mismatch between the fitness and health requirements of strenuous firefighting and the current fitness profile of the U.S. Fire Service. Drop the mic, Denise Smith. We are not fit enough to do our job, and it's causing us issues. And so, again, we can look at those things in terms of what can we do to help firefighters. In, I guess I didn't write down the year on this one, but Michaelides said some firefighters fail to maintain appropriate levels of conditioning for peak job performance. And then good old Mark Abel, in an issue of the Journal of Strength and Conditioning in 2015, said annually firefighters incur about 80,000 injuries, which costs billions of dollars in treatment and lost time from employment. Again, drop the mic. These are things that a health and wellness professional can address. And so once they've talked to your agency and figured out what your particular problems are, do they have zero time to train? Do they have zero equipment? Do they have zero direction? Are they eating out all the time because their call volume is so high that their unit utilization is through the roof and that's the only choice they have? What are the particular tripping points at your agency? What are the pain points? Then the professional can come up with a solution. But if the agency is just saying, like, we're in pain, make it go away, drop a contract, nobody's going to win. Nobody's going to win because the agency is going to spend money on things that aren't truly solutions. When we look at, if we dig a little bit deeper into performance just for a second, and keeping in mind that NFPA actually just changed the METS/VO2 max recommendation. So keeping that in mind, in addition to a pretty solid VO2 max, these individuals need to be what amounts to a decathlete. They have to be able to sustain aerobic activity and anaerobic activity for an unknown and undetermined and unknowable amount of time. They have to be able to buffer lactate like a badass. They have to be able to tolerate a pretty high millimolar concentration of lactate in order to not fatigue out. Interesting side note though, females actually are much more resilient to fatigue. I just took a whole semester long course on fatigue, and because of the way we're physiologically put together, we are more resistant to fatigue. Who knew? We firefighters also, again, we need to be decathletes because we have to be strong, but we also have to have power, which is ability to express that strength quickly, and endurance, ability to do the same mundane, low-level activity a million bazillion times without fatiguing out. We need to have that joint mobility and stability that I already addressed. And we also need to be able to use proper body mechanics to get the job done. And then proper body composition, nothing gets better when you are over fat. I'm so sorry, but nothing gets better when you have too much body fat. But I want to revisit that body mechanics thing for a second. And I don't exactly remember the year the study was done, but it was back when Exos was still athletes' performance. So I'm going to guess more than 10 years ago. They did a study in Pensacola, Florida, and they divided the firefighters into 3 groups. They had the bodybuilding intervention, they had the body movement intervention, and I'll explain that in a second, and then they had the control, which was no intervention. The body movement intervention, they just taught them how to push and pull and hinge and squat and carry heavy crap. They did not teach them how to force a door, take a window, cut a hole in a roof, pull a hose line. They didn't teach them any of those things. Hinge and squat, push and pull, carry heavy crap. And then the bodybuilding intervention was a typical hypertrophy-based, body part split program. And the length of the time on the intervention escapes me now, but for some reason I think it was 12 weeks. It might have been 8. But the interesting part is they came back later after the study was done, and they looked retrospectively at injuries. And they said, of these 3 groups, which group got injured the most? And a lot of people would have guessed the people that didn't exercise at all, the control group. But actually, what they found was the group that did the bodybuilding splits had the highest rate of injuries, followed by the group that didn't work out at all, followed by the group that just did the movement interventions. Again, hinge, squat, push, pull, carry heavy shit. And so they speculated, like, why are these people, we didn't teach them how to force a door, but you taught them how to hinge, squat, push, pull, and carry heavy stuff that translates to fireground tasks much more accurately than bicep curls and, I don't know, pull-ups. Not to say those things aren't important, they are, but movement patterns translate better to fireground skills. So if I could just leave you with one thought, two thoughts today. The first one is this: please don't ask a professional to provide a solution. I want you to think about that word. It's now a solution. It's no longer a contract. It's a solution. Please don't ask that professional to provide you with a solution before taking the time to do a needs analysis for your agency to make sure that that solution is really going to diminish that pain point for you. Pain point or points. You may have more than one. And then the other thing is, and I teach my students never to price their solutions a la carte, because the agency then looks at it and says, okay, we can't afford this, this, and this. Well, guess what? This, and this were the most important part of that solution. So never price things a la carte. Always provide it as this is the solution. And here are some add-ons. These are value added, more bang for your buck, whatever you want to call them. Here are some things to add on if you so choose. So what I would say to agencies is please don't look at the contract proposal and then push it back to the professional and say, can you price this out individually? If they went through my class, they'll say no. If they didn't go through my class, they'll say yes. And then you will end up cutting out very important parts of the solution. So take home message. We have to create a relationship on both sides, not just the health and wellness professional creating a relationship with you, the agency, but the agency also creating that relationship with a health and wellness professional. We are taking things slow. We are asking good questions. We're having good conversation. We're not rushing to hop into quote unquote bed. We are putting together a really valuable and long-term relationship that is going to help you solve the pain points at your agency. That's all I got. See you next week. AZ is out.